Alright, so today we're just going to talk quickly about changing the gear oil on a Royal Alloy 150 here in the US. It's a GY6 motor, so it's really straightforward. Just going to drain the gear oil, make sure everything looks like it's not full of metal, put the bolt back in and fill it back up. Let's just talk about the tools you need to do the job. We've got our classic 10mm socket, maybe an extension if you need it. We've got our standard ratchet, our torque wrench, a container for our used gear oil. Our new gear oil here, so 85W140, is what the manual calls for. And to refill it, I use this little Ideal Instruments syringe. So it is a 60 milliliter syringe. Got it at Tractor Supply Company, of all things, for horse doctoring. But it's a nice way to measure, get our fluid in there pretty accurately. And then we'll use my little cheat sheet here for the Royal Alloy, which gives us just kind of all of that information. So I've got what chemicals do we need, what volumes go in, and some general pictures we can see here, showing you the fill and the drain bolt for the differential. I'll go ahead and post that on the internet too so I can share it with you folks. But let's go ahead and get set up. First thing, let's just identify our bolts. You've got different hardware back here. We've got our kind of silver hardware that's holding our engine casing together around our transmission there. And then we've got this copper, kind of brassy colored hardware on the top and on the bottom. And that's going to be those drain and those fill holes. So we can see right there is our drain, right there is our fill. And it's even telling you on the side of the motor that it takes 0.17 liters. I think that's an L. Our 10 millimeter socket. Put it onto our wrench. And we're going to knock loose this bolt. It's nice to have a rag handy with our container just open underneath there to catch the fluid that drips out. So just put it on. Shouldn't take too much to break it loose. There we go. Now that we broke it loose, we're just going to do it by hand. And then once that's unscrewed, we'll just let that oil drain right into our container. With our rag, we can set this bolt down. Before that, we'll take a look. Use our light here, just make sure everything looks pretty healthy. That's a good color. This is pretty fresh gear oil, but we're going to change it anyway. We've got our little crush washer on there, and then we'll go ahead and just let that continue draining. While it drains out, we'll take our extension on our socket here, pop it on, and then we're going to just go ahead and loosen and remove the fill bolt as well. If you remove this first, it might drain out a little bit faster. I like having it in there just because that way I feel like I have a little more time as it starts to drain because there's a bit of a vacuum or something. Go ahead and remove this as well, and we'll let that fluid continue to drain. All right, now that that's all drained out, we're going to take our drain bolt and just fit it back up into our hole. It's easier to get a little low, then you can find it. Having extra light never hurts. We'll screw that back in just finger tight at first. Once that's up there pretty good, we can move our container out of the way. There it is. Move that out of the way. Don't spill it. This stuff kind of smells like shit. And then we'll use our rag and we'll just wipe off that area for any of those drips that sort of came out as we got in there. Then we'll go ahead and we'll start snugging that back up. Now, one thing we know from my little cheat sheet that I have, which just has all the specs for the scooters in the house, my wife and I's, we'll go ahead and check that again because we know that it requires a torque spec on the gear oil drain screw of 14 foot-pounds. This beautiful Harbor Freight torque wrench here I found lets me go everywhere from 5 on up. So we'll just go ahead and set it to 14 foot-pounds. Put it on. And then we'll just snug it till we hear that bump. And there we go. Now we know our gear oil drain screw is back in and tight. And so now comes the part where we have to fill our gear oil reservoir back up. I mentioned I like to use this Ideal Instruments syringe from Tractor Supply Company. I like it. It comes in a little container, so I can have one just for gear oil, and that sits here all the time. All we do is pop it open, and I shortened my hose down a little bit because I'm just going to use this hose so I can fill my syringe from my gear oil bottle here. This goes to 60 milliliters. Now I know, again, from my cheat sheet that we require 150 milliliters here in the Royal Alloy. So we're going to fill this up to 53 times. We'll pop the hose off at the end, and then we'll just go ahead and slowly inject that there into our gear oil reservoir. So nice and quick, pop that on. We take our gear oil here, and what I like to do is just start pulling my syringe open. It says for veterinary use only, but it's more of a suggestion than a requirement. And then we'll just go ahead and start to fill that up. And we can draw that fluid back into our syringe. I started this at a bad angle because I can't see my numbers, but there we go. And we'll just start to suck that oil in until we get our syringe all the way down here to that 50 milliliter mark. And this is something real hard to do without making it easy for me to see. But we'll go ahead and we'll just fill that up, all of that gear fluid, until it's all the way filled. So if you're doing it, not for a camera, it's a bit easier for us to see. We'll go ahead and we'll try one more time. Do it again here. So I'm going to cheat. I'm just going to fill it up so we can tell I've already got, what is that, 17 milliliters. We'll just do the same thing. Get that in there nice and snug. We'll come down to our syringe and we'll just suck that gear oil in all the way down. Now it's working the way it's supposed to. Hopefully that focuses a little bit. We can get ourselves all the way down here to about 50. There's a little air gap on top, but once we take this off, this will all settle in. We'll go ahead and we'll have our, chasing the air bubbles here. There we go. We've got, just a little over 50 milliliters. So we take that, remove our hose, set it on our rag, and then, just like the doctor would, gently squirt that in. If you go gently, you won't splurt out the hole and make a mess everywhere. Phrasing. But we'll go ahead and we'll do that. And I'm going to do that same thing 2 more times. Give us a total of 150 milliliters. Got syringe number 2 filled up to 50. I remembered that if you leave that hose on your bottle, life gets a bit easier when it comes time to fill. So we take that same process again here. Just go ahead and slowly feed that oil on in. Go too fast, it'll splurt. But for the most part, just there we go. Any drips you can just wipe up quick, nice and easy. And we'll fill that one more time. So let's see if we can't show you again. Get that in, hold your bottle upside down like that, and we'll just go ahead and start. Whoop. Start filling. Just like that. If you get a lot of air in there, you can sort of burp the system by just bending it, letting those air bubbles come back in. Get it back vertical again. And you'll fill her up until we get to, we're going to go just a hair past 45, just under 50, because we did overfill that first syringe. Pop her off, and we're good to go. And then we'll go ahead and just take that last syringe. And same process as before. Fill her up nice and slow. That's going to go ahead and complete most of the dirty work. So it's all in there. You can decide if you want to try burping your syringe a little bit into the hole, but we're pretty well full, so we'll just go ahead and put our drain can back under to catch any drips. And there we go. Empty out whatever liquid we've got left here in our syringe. That. Any of your overflow that's pouring out is okay. Then we take our fill screw, plug it in, and we just go ahead and screw that all the way back in, get it good and snug. You could do the same torque spec as the drain plug if you wanted, or you can just turn it till it's tight. It's not like you have gravity working against you there when we got it, but since we've already got our torque wrench set up, just go ahead and grab our extension again. Always good to have extensions on hand when you're working on the scooters. Put it on there, just give it a, maybe get it a little more than finger tight before you gotta put the torque wrench on it. There we go, and then there's our click. We know we're good, and our gear oil change is completed. If you've got this syringe, the way I like to use it, just take it, label it, drop your syringe back in, put the cap on. It's a little goofy looking, but you're good to go. Grab a rag, wipe up any of your drips, and then first night, just make sure you keep an eye, there's no drips coming out while you're working, or while it's sitting, that you got that drain bolt tight enough, and that's all you got to do. Pretty easy process. We're left with a can of gear fluid we got to get rid of. Better to use something that takes a cap. I'm just not great at planning. Clean up our tools, and that's the easiest way to go ahead and accomplish your gear oil change on the Royal Alloy GT150. Again, there's your gear oil selection. Got that just at AutoZone. I'm working off of my scooter cheat sheet that has all my specs on it, so I don't really have to question anything. All I got to do is put it together.